Lewis will do the Pledge of Allegiance. The flags in the room.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. I am filling in for Mr. Rebatero, who is out of pockets this week, and we will go to good news with Mr. Hilderly.
Right, we have a couple of items. First of all, we want to welcome our student board members to the meeting. It's one of the reasons that we're a little bit wider and a little bit longer. We've been squeezing people in for the last few meetings, so if the configuration feels or looks different, it is. But welcome, please. We've got Emma Abbott and Emily Stevenson from the leadership class at the high school. What we have been doing, if you have been getting reports from your fellow students, is just encouraging you to participate in the discussion at any time that you feel like a student perspective is valuable. And then there may be at some points where we actually point to one of you and say, what do you think? We're really interested in the input that we get from students. Obviously, you don't have voting rights, but we do want to hear your perspective on the items that we discuss this evening. So welcome, we're glad you're here. And then we do have a couple of awards to report. These were handed out at the county board member, and these are the MASB. This is for the Certified Board Member Award to Mrs. Davis. So congratulations on that. And also you have an award of merit from the MASB for your accomplishments in taking their trainings. And then we also have a certificate of achievement, the award of merit for Mrs. Brooks, who could not be here tonight. But good news for those board members who are continuing their education at the board level. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, we're moving to public comment on agenda items only. In accordance with the Open Meeting Act of 1986, the board provides opportunity for citizen input during the public comment. Because agendas are full, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, and at this point, it is on agenda items only. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on into the board agenda. First is any recommended revisions of the agenda.
None from the administration.
All right, seeing none, we have a motion to approve the agenda. As
So
written.
moved.
Second.
So moved and seconded to approve the agenda as written. Mr. Simpson,
Aye.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Approval is passed. Agenda is passed. We'll move on to scheduled reports. First is financial report and audit report from Mrs. Glenn.
Good evening, board. We're actually going to do the October monthly financials next month, since we have the annual audit report. And I'd like to introduce to the board William Tucker with Manor Costarison. I can say that. Sorry.
All right. Well, good evening. Bill Tucker from Maynard Costarison.
Thank you.
Takes a
What
lot
he
of
said.
practice. Yeah, Costarison. Here tonight to present to you the audited financial statements from June 30th, 2022. I'll start by just kind of walking through the information that was handed out to you tonight, and then we'll get into the audit presentation itself. So there was 3 separate documents that were handed out to you. The first document that I'll hold up is the large bound report. This is the audited financial statements for June 30th, 2022. Within this document, you'll find all the necessary financial statements and note disclosures to be in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Also within this document on pages 1 and 2, you'll find the independent auditor's report that provides our opinion on those financial statements as well. So all that's in this large bound report for you. The second document that I have for you, this is the one loose letter. This is on Maynard Costarison letterhead. A majority of this letter, the board communication letter, is boilerplate language. Does go through and address some of the more significant estimates within the financial statements for such things as useful life of capital assets. Also within this document, If there was ever any disagreements with management or any other issues, that would kind of be in this letter for you as a board. Just to let you know there were none, but that is kind of the purpose of this letter, that separate letter. And then the last document that I have for you is that audit presentation outline. So I've taken pages out of the financial statements, also included a couple graphs and charts in there for you as well. So we'll go page by page by page through that document tonight. All right. The first page that we're going to turn to in the audit presentation outline is that overview of the independent auditor's report. As I mentioned, that is on pages 1 and 2 of those bound financial statements. The purpose of an audit is to provide an opinion as to the fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. It's not to detect fraud, and it's not to give you an opinion on your internal controls. Within the independent auditor's report, we're providing our opinion on your financial statements. We're actually giving our opinion on the 4 opinion units of the district. Those 4 opinion units are the governmental activities, each major fund, in which there's 2 major funds in the current year, the general fund and the debt service fund. And then the last opinion unit is the aggregate remaining fund information. We're providing unmodified or clean opinions on each of those 4 opinion units. And that's the best opinion you can receive on your financial statements, meaning that everything is presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Moving on from there, we're going to turn to the next page. This is page number 13 of the financial statements. The heading at the top of this page is your governmental funds balance sheet. The governmental funds balance sheet is a snapshot of your assets, liabilities, and fund balance at June 30th, 2022. And this is presented on the modified accrual basis of accounting. So that's the basis of accounting that you're adopting your budgets at. So when you're adopting your budget for your general fund, that's on the modified accrual basis of accounting. On this page in particular, we like to look at the far left column, the general fund, as that is the main operating fund for the district. And we also like to look at the second number up from the bottom, your total fund balance, and then also combinations of your unassigned and assigned components of that fund balance as well. So at June 30th, 2022, you had total fund balance within your general fund of $3,513,038, with portions of that fund balance that are considered to be non-spendable for such things as prepaid expenses. So you've already expended those dollars out, leaving you with the assigned and unassigned components of fund balance of $3,171,855 that is available for expenditures in future periods. That dollar amount represents approximately 10% of your annual operating expenditures. And that is down from last year. Last year is about 21% of annual operating expenses in fund balance. Moving on from there to the next page. The next page we're going to turn to is page 15. This is your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances for the year ended June 30th, 2022. Again, focusing on that far left column for your general fund, start off at the top with your total revenues. Total revenues in the current year of approximately $28.6 million. That was an increase of approximately $110,000 or 0.4% compared to the previous year. So very consistent in your revenues year over year. Moving down the page to your total expenditures, you had total expenditures in the current year of approximately $30.9 million. That was an increase of approximately $3.4 million compared to the previous year. A couple of areas that we saw increases within your expenditures. The first area was your instruction expenditures. We're up about $2.4 million compared to the previous year. And a couple areas that we saw there. First, your salaries and wages were up. Also increases in current year purchases of Chromebooks, increased sub rates, and also some additional dollars there from a child care grant where you had some additional expenditures within those instruction expenditures. The other area that we saw a significant increase was your supporting services. Your supporting service expenditures were up about $900,000 compared to the previous year. So main areas that we saw fluctuations here was related to HVAC repairs and also increased need in the current year in kind of a post-COVID utilization resuming to normal activities for such things as like transportation, community services, and athletics. So increase in your expenditures. Results for the year, third number up from the bottom, a decrease in your fund balance in the dollar amount of $2,395,893. Right. Moving on from there, I did have a couple graphs and charts for you, give you a visual perspective of some of those same numbers. So the first chart that we have for you is a 5-year analysis of your general fund revenues, expenditures, and fund balance. So as you can see from this, the revenues is the blue, expenditures is the purple, and then the yellow is your fund balance.
What page is that on?
Oh, it's in this chart.
Okay. What's that?
Is it in there?
Is it this one?
To the packet.
It's in the packet.
That one, yes.
On this one, Greg.
There you go. Yep, right there. Perfect. So the first, so 3 out of the last 5 years, your expenditures have exceeded your revenues, including obviously 2022. So you can see those trends over those last couple of years, and then that trend there for your fund balance in 2022 as well. The next pages I have for you is the composition of your revenues and expenditures. So a couple of pie charts on the next 2 pages. Just again, giving you that visual perspective. Starting off the top of the page with your revenues, making up the largest component of your revenues within your general fund is your state sources of revenue. It's 86% of your total revenues. That is up a little bit compared to the previous year. Last year was 84% of your total revenue sources. The bottom charts on your general fund expenditure detail, making up the largest component of your expenditures is your instruction expenditures at 63% of your total expenditures in 2022. That is up 1% from the previous year. Last year was 62% of total expenditures. Just to add on a little bit more to that, I did have I didn't put in your thing, but I did have a little bit more information on that 62%, just to give you guys an idea. This is last year's data, so I'll preface with that. But for Tecumseh schools in 2022 or 2020, 2021, as I mentioned, you're at 62% for instruction. Statewide, 59% is the average across the state. And then within the ISD of Lenawee ISD, it's about 62% is the average across the entire county on instruction. So just give that perspective there as well. All right. Last couple pages I have for you within that bound report. This is page 61 and 62 of the financial statements. This last 2 pages is the summary of the audit results, starting off the top of the page with the financial statements. As I mentioned, that unmodified clean opinion on the financial statements for June 30th, 2022. The next section that gets into there, it relates to your internal control or financial reporting. We did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in your internal controls or financial reporting in the current year. The next section down relates to federal awards. So you did expend greater than $750,000 in federal awards in the current year, requiring what they call a single audit. So we did test one major program in the current year for your single audit, and that is your child nutrition cluster was selected as the major program. As we went through the compliance requirements for that major program, we did not identify any material weaknesses in the internal controls over that program. We did identify one significant deficiency related to that program, and it was related to, and this is on the very next page, related to the amount of fund balance that is in the food service fund. So The criteria for that fund, the district's food service fund, the district's food fund balance in the food service fund is required to be less than 3 months of food service expenditures. And that exceeded that threshold in the current year, therefore requiring this significant deficiency that's been identified. All right. That's Rob stopping. Any questions on anything I went over or anything additional in the reports?
Any questions from the board?
One, you said that our instruction and this page right here, 63%. You said 62, but it says 63 here. But so the state average is 59.
Yeah, so the data that I have from CEPI, you can pull a report from CEPI, is prior data. So it's
Okay.
it's 2021's data. So last year you guys were at 62%.
Okay.
Statewide it was 59, and
Okay.
countywide it was
Okay.
about 62.
Okay.
So
Thank
once all the information from this year is uploaded to the state, they can kind of produce those reports and give you the current year information. But I would guess it's going to be right in that same percentile.
That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the board? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Moving on to the board policy committee updates for Mr. Simpson for 10/17 and 11/9. 2 meetings.
Well, there's really only one thing we talked about, and that was coming up with a policy to make sure we're allocating funds each year to capital expenditures. And I think it'll be something more we'll probably talk about when the full board's here.
Right.
But that's all that we talked about. So.
And that policy is highlighted in the board shared folder. It's policy number 3202. And there are 5 items under the heading letter A, budget. We're suggesting that a 6th item be added, and the language is highlighted in yellow. So you can review that, and it'll be on for a discussion item at the next meeting.
Are we going to discuss in the budget committee? Was there any? Is there a need to discuss in the budget committee prior to the next board meeting?
No.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Simpson? All right. Moving to budget committee, I guess I'll report on behalf of Mrs. Brooks. So we had 2 major topics. One was the audit report, and we went through that. And then the second one was related to the security proposal and information about some cost estimates that we had received from the team. So I'm going to actually not go into a lot of detail there and let the security committee report do that. Any questions about the budget committee? Okay. Facilities and grounds committee. So the notes were in your packet. So we covered 4 areas. The security proposal again, ESSER project updates. So talk about understanding which parts we actually have so that we could estimate them. And all ESSER funds are approved. So thank you, Mrs. Glenn, for that hard work. And then energy savings project, Mike is working on water projects, and then Consumers Energy has completed their visit. And we have the recommendations there that Tom and Mike are going through. And then Mr. Hawkins shared his director's report. So we talked about the pool, that the high school, the new custodial person for the high school is complete, that hiring, and then also about pool air testing and continuing inspections of the pool. So that's all we had. Any questions on the facilities committee? All right, we'll move to security committee, which I'm guessing Mr. Hilderly, you're going to report on.
Well, I can report on it. I'm looking for the notes right now. We had reports on that committee that include Mrs. Brooks, Mr. Ribatero, and Mr. Lewis, from Officer Rogers, and also Devin and Tom at the director level. Primarily, the conversation is about prioritizing the security needs district-wide. And originally, there was money that was allocated through budget to deal with door alarms and following the Uvalde, Texas school incident. We were concerned about knowing when our doors were open. We've done some work in identifying specific doors that we might have more concern about than others, but also the recommendation from that group that I mentioned is that right now we have doors that are main entry doors that can pull open without an enormous amount of force. So it was their priority recommendation that we look at door security prior to door alarm systems, and talked for quite a while about that. And then also prioritizing the secure entry. At that point, we were pre-election, so we were talking about high school, middle school primarily. But now there'll have to be discussion about the same things related to our elementary buildings that we're going to have to do something about to make sure that our entries are more secure. So there's more, I think, probably more now for the security committee to consider following the election than there was previous to the election. So those are basically the highlights. Mr. Lewis, can you think of anything else that needs to be mentioned?
No, that's pretty much covered. I mean, I think the priority is still doors. It's just shifting how we're going to take care of those.
Right. Really trying to prioritize the highest need and the greatest impact with the money.
Do we have items identified already before the audit that we can get through the state?
For this
For the
particular
yeah.
project, yeah, we do have some. And then also talked about the grant that we will be submitting, that will, first of all, we'll pay for an assessment of all of our facilities for the security company to say, here's where your greatest need is. And then next year allocating money to approach those things.
When's the next meeting?
We have one scheduled for December. The 14th at 6 o'clock is the next security committee meeting.
So as
So
a board,
it'll be after our 1 December meeting. So we won't come back with more information until January.
because we do have, I think it's 400,000
Yes.
budget this year. So,
Yep.
okay, good.
And we have targeted some things that are below the board bid threshold to try to accomplish. But the bigger projects are going to require an RFP and board approval.
Any questions? Other board members? Okay. Move on to discussion items, the suicide prevention plan.
Suicide prevention plan. We have a presentation from Mrs. Morgan, or at least conversation.
Well, so we presented the program or the plan that we came up with for review. I just wanted board approval.
Okay.
If you have any questions.
Any further input or anything the board needs to know of before discussing it? Okay.
Is this the plan we have every year? Same plan?
It's been updated, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you update it, you do, is it new things by law?
The information we get from parents that's on
How does this compare to what other schools do? Kind of,
It's actually based on
okay.
other schools, so,
all right,
which is based off of the national model.
right, okay. Thank you.
So we'll vote on this in December.
Yeah, it'll be back up on our December agenda for approval.
Could we maybe get last year's plan as well, just for comparison? Any other questions or requests for that before next meeting? All right, bond proposals, next steps. Mr. Hilton.
Right. As we're all sadly aware, the two bond proposals were turned down by the community in the November 8th election. Since that time, I have sent the board a variety of pieces of information about how we might respond to that. We still have a fairly significant list of things that are in disrepair that have to be addressed over the next 3 to 5 years. I believe just in having a variety of conversations with each of you that this group feels like hard decisions are going to be put off until January when we have two new board members who are seated that will be a part of carrying out whatever plan that we have. So tonight, I guess I just want to invite each board member to be a part of a discussion about your thoughts specific to where we might go from here and what our response to the election should be, either short-term, long-term, or both. I've said, I think to a few of you that whatever the plan is, it certainly can't just be the Rick Hilderly plan. Obviously I have a lot of experience and knowledge in the community and in this position in the district. And I want to carry out whatever the will of the board is. And I have thoughts and ideas, but when I say those things either publicly or even among the staff, then they sometimes become the plan. So I'm very careful with what I mention and when. I think that it's important that those discussions take place here and be made clear that, even if we start to talk about things tonight, we're not making decisions at this meeting. We're talking about ideas and what we might want to try to do to deal with our needs, our strong needs here in the district with our facilities. So just open the floor to discussion from the members and your thoughts on the outcome of the election.
Well, it was disappointing for sure because we didn't. I think sometimes people lose sight of the fact that everybody says this board's a taxpayer too. I mean, we didn't want to pay more taxes or think that there wasn't a need for it. There is a need for it. We see it. We see it in black and white. So that opportunity is by the window or out the window. So I don't know the best way to go about it from here. I know we're going to have next year, if we try and do a lot of the repairs that we have to do out of fund equity, we're probably going to be in a deficit situation unless the state really ups the ante, which I don't think anybody really expects that at this point. I think we need to start taking a look at cuts soon and implement them soon, because we know we're going to have a shortfall next year. It's the hard reality of it. It's what you do when you have a household budget. Nobody wants to do it. It wasn't our plan. Our plan was to pass the bond, but it didn't pass. It kind of leaves us in the lurch.
Well, I think we got slaughtered. It was 65 to 35 essentially.
Yeah.
That's a slaughter in the election. So, so I think we have to listen to what the community said, and they said no way, and so we got to tighten up our belt. And how we do that and how we go about it, we're going to have to probably have a lot of meetings about it and so forth, but I agree with Greg that we need to be getting on it in January and get going. So I think even trying to go out back out for a sinking fund at this point, I mean, if it was close, I could see like a sinking fund or something, but it wasn't even close. So I think it would just be a waste of resources and time and just shooting ourselves in the foot, wasting more time not to address what we need to address right now. So.
I was disappointed because the reality is you can't make any improvements to your schools, like new schools or additions or without passing a bond. This town is notorious for not passing a bond. However, they were successful when they got to high school, and then a couple years later, they successfully passed the bond. And I think they did a more grassroots effort. I mean, door to door sounds stupid, and especially during COVID, you couldn't. But they really worked hard for many, many months. I for sure think we should go back again, not right away, maybe not even in 1 year. The economy right now is horrible. So that could have been a huge reason why people don't want to have anything to do with it. But, and then on a, we have to budget for things we have to fix, and we have to prioritize them like they're doing in the group we were just talking about, security. And we might have to look to close the school. And on a positive side, we need to keep tooting our own horn and be the best we can be and draw people to come to school here because we're so great with our sports and our updated, curriculum, and we're constantly trying to improve. So if we can tout a lot of successes, we draw people here, and of course in this economy, people are not really moving anywhere. I don't know. They're buying houses right now, but
Well, I think something people also need to remember too. It wasn't like the schools had a lot of money from 2008 to 2018. There was a 10-year bleak area there where
Right.
funding was dried up.
Yeah.
Teachers had to take a pay cut.
Yeah.
I mean, we had the worst recession in the history, of this country, and so it wasn't like the schools were like just the board or previous boards or anybody were negligent on that. It was just the sign of the times, and
Yeah.
you just were doing everything we could to keep the door open.
yeah,
So,
well, and it was hard to pass a bond here. I mean, they tried to give the town the land where Lenawee Stamping is, whoever owned it, and said, all you have to do is come up with half the money because the land and the building amounted to X, and half of the money was the land, and they still didn't pass the bond. So it's kind of a history of that, but we need more grassroots, and we need to tighten the horn down here and make cuts. Problem is you can't cut pay because you got to keep good people.
Yeah, I agree with everything my fellow board members have said. I think there's a potential trust factor. I agree with Mr. Simpson. I think if you look at the financial situation in the state of Michigan for the last 10 to 15 years, we're just now really coming back to zero. But, I'm not sure what the next step would be. I'd like to hear from community members that voted no, why they voted no. I want to make sure that if it's a trust factor, there are things we possibly could do. We could look at more transparent budget sharing, how the budget is determined, what the money can be used for, where we're spending the money. We're going to have to do that if we make major cuts. I think it's disingenuous of us and incorrect of us to make cuts and not explain to the community why through the budget, why we have to make those cuts. And I also think if we do have some projects like the security project or like the ESSER fund projects, we need to share how we're going to manage those, what the budget is, how we're going to manage those, and give good reports to the community of how we're, as a district and a board, I think really showing that we can manage their money when they vote yes for a bond, and start kind of building up. If there is a lack of trust in the community, it's a vote like we received would say that maybe there's a little bit of that problem. And we had heard that after the first bond proposal. that might be something we want to talk about. But I think we have to be, I feel like, and I shared this when we voted, that we were rushing into doing another vote in November after May. I think if we do another vote, and I was looking at some of the information you shared, Mr. Hilderly, so thank you for that. We need a really clear timeline and a clear plan and of if we are going to ask for something, or even if we're communicating how we're doing on projects, how we're going to do that, and just try to be. I think this board is definitely more transparent than a previous board I sat on. I think this board gets more transparent every day, and I think that will. We're sorry to see Mrs. Brooks and Mrs. Moore leave. But I think with our new board members that are coming on, we'll continue that. So that might be something we want to talk about, is what can we share, and how can we share it a little bit more openly. So.
Well, and the success they had too, they broke everything down. I mean, how about this, that, they kept everything separate.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't fond of, but it seemed to work.
And I think there are some school districts that have had success with bonds, both locally, but maybe into Michigan a little bit more. Holly Schools has had like 2 successful bond issues, one right after the other. It might benefit us to maybe reach out to those school districts that have been successful and ask about how they also, if they dealt with some community pushback. But we're trending out of some of the issues that we had as a district over the last 5 years, but we have to realize that our community is going to vote on it. So trying to understand, I think, what their concerns are might be helpful. So, and I think too, if we are looking at cuts, we need to have a very, very clear decision matrix about that, and it needs to be very transparent to the community. Like, if it comes down to a building, which building costs the most to repair, which buildings cost the most to run,
Which building's sitting on a piece of property that will bring in the most money?
the value from the traffic patterns and where the children are located that go to those schools, which one has the least, possibility for efficiency for buses and all those types of things. We have to have, I think, that really clear as well. So,
Well, and also from that perspective, how much square footage can we give up and still run the program that we run?
Right.
And knowing that the 4 elementary buildings that we use now none of them are the same size. So, thinking about grade level configuration and what building could be absorbed by others, that's all part of the conversation. And that conversation is really going to require some input from staff. And that conversation needs to get started too.
and I think related to us having a policy about saving money for capital expenditures, I think we absolutely should do that. But in the case of 2008, 2009, there has to be an escape hatch in that policy for when all the money we have that's available to us is to pay for teachers. I mean, we have to have some, but it has to be fairly robust, because, you could I took a drive around the buildings the weekend after the election. I didn't get out of the car or walk around or anything, and you can see how they're degrading. So how the brick is falling, at Patterson. So it rained that day, that morning. Patterson, you had water soaked up into like the 3rd brick. None of the other schools had that, but you could see where, it's not protecting the inside of the building anymore. It's actually, that the exterior is accepting the elements. So there's a lot of things that we need to look at and discuss. And I think, also in the decision matrix, it's very clear in 2018 that the heritage of the schools is very important. We got to think about, what's the right way to honor the heritage of the community as well. But we have excellent teachers. We want to support them. To Mrs. Moore's comment, we have excellent new curriculum, and we have excellent new programs that are coming up, and we want to maintain, as much of that as we possibly can. So, but
And the economy will turn around and things will get better, and it's a bad time right now.
One other little piece of misery that I don't know that I've even mentioned to the board. You probably all know it, but the two groups that we have worked with in the last 2 or 3 years to help with this, TMP and Plant Moran, our agreements with them said that they would work with us through um, two attempts at a bond. And we have exhausted both of those, and now we owe a bill to both of those people. So that just adds to the debt. Is that we've got to pay those agreements off.
So I think it'll be a good discussion when the full board is seated. And I think it's important, even though Mrs. Brooks and Mrs. Moore are rolling off the board, that,
You get some new perspective.
yeah, but we also hear yours because you've been involved, from the beginning of the discussions.
What are, if I can ask, without having much time for you to think about it, but what are some other pieces of information that you would like to have to consider that Kelly and I, and working with the budget committee, what are the critical pieces of information that you really want to make sure that we consider and bring to you for consideration? The employee costs, those are things that are pretty finite. The cost to run buildings in terms of their energy expenses and snow removal and grass cutting and things like that. Those are all numbers that we can get. But are there other things that you would like to know in terms of total numbers that we can provide you?
I think if Mr. Hawkins and Mrs. Glenn could tighten up and clean up that 5-year repair report that was shared with the facilities and budget team, I think that was done at a different stage of the inflationary cycle. And so we need to see what that looks like a little bit more.
Those are June numbers. So
Well,
Figuring
just like you
that
prioritized all of the other improvements, these need to be prioritized too. And I don't really know how to save money other than closing the school. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of smaller ways you can save them, but I guess I'd like to know number wise what that would look like.
Okay.
And if it's even possible.
all right, we'll work on that. We have a budget committee meeting before the board meeting on the 12th, and we'll work on those pieces of information.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board members on this item?
Can I say something?
Sure. Would
Okay.
you guys like to?
Yes,
Sorry.
please, both of you.
So I wish that people that voted no could really know what it's like to be a student here. I think this year especially, we had such a good year with our sports, and I just see happiness in the hallways, and our teachers are so fun and they get excited and they're great. Everybody was just in a good mood this year. So many good things are happening in our school. And so I think that anything that the students can do to help you pass a bond in the future, whether that's some sort of student campaign where we kind of get out there and we
That's a great idea.
let community members know how much we love it here and all the great things that happen.
Yep, more grassroots.
Yeah, I'm sure that.
Mrs. Jones, why did you vote no? Look at me.
Explain to this 7-year-old. You just don't care.
So yeah, anything that students could do, I'm sure that, our leadership class especially, we love to help our community. So
That's a great idea.
Something on that too is that you can't go into a mindset of death. You still have to be in a growth mindset,
Yes.
and we still need to try to recruit other students to come see
Yep,
schools.
it's a good
Yeah,
Because
point.
that helps the problem a lot.
Yeah, it
That's
does.
an easier thing to do than to cut staff, I can tell you that much. And I've never
Or
been,
close a
I've never
building.
been in any of my years business had to cut anything. The only reason I cut was to save money on little silly things, okay? But if we have a growth mindset and we can start getting more kids here, that's gonna take care of a lot of these issues. And maybe we really ought to look at that as well. Yeah, do I think we need to make some cuts and tighten up our belt? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think we also need to get on this growth mindset.
I do too.
Let's get more students here. And maybe we go door to door. Maybe we get some of you that there's a kid going to Clinton and you go knock on the door and say, get back to Clinton. Maybe that's what it will take. I don't know, but we need to get into that growth mindset. So
I think
thank
I
you.
just heard
Thank
the
you.
best ambassador for Tecumseh just about 2 minutes ago to my left. That's a really important thing. I mean, I worked here for a long time, and when Mrs. Moore was on the board, I was an employee. So was Mr. Hilderly, and we got this building built, and then everybody thought that it would make a difference. It's not the structure; it's the people within the structure. And when you talk about the positive things that are going on here, and the fact that you enjoy being students, I mean, your grandfather was, and he was, I think, the board president when this passed, when they got this thing run through. And now you're sitting here, so
Who, Milt?
that's pretty cool. So
I like milk.
that's pretty cool. It is. It's cool stuff. So I mean, there's a legacy here, and that's got to get carried on. I'm an alumni from here, and we're not better than anybody else. We just work a little harder. That's all. We work together, and that's what we have to do now.
Yeah, and I think Mrs. Moore said it well as well. We need to tout
Yes, we got to do a
our
better job at
assets,
that.
what we do well. I think that goes to Mr. Simpson's point about how do we explain Tecumseh better to families that are looking to move into the area. I mean, now's a great time with remote work. Tecumseh's always been kind of outside of that radius of preferred commute from Ann Arbor or Toledo, but now that's not as big of a factor. That's something that maybe we can work with the city on. How do we sell Tecumseh in general? And I think as a board, we have to keep that in mind as we do look at cuts, to make sure that we're balancing those things. But and this is just my opinion. I'm not the president of the board, but when I voted for the bond, I thought about it this way. Well, I think these two young ladies are absolutely fabulous, and I like to cheer for them at their various activities. I voted for one of our fourth grade teachers' babies. I voted for one of our team teachers' brand new babies around the election. That's who I voted for, because that was who was going to benefit from the things that were coming from the bond. And my father-in-law told me something, and he said he used to extremely conservative, financially conservative guy, but he voted yes for schools because somebody voted for his kids, and it was his turn to vote for their kid, for somebody else's kids. It's your money, but it's for the kids in the community. And so if we can start to send that story out in a positive way, I think that's important as well. So.
Ladies, I know you both are very engaged in school and athletics and activities. So you go to other places for events, whether you're a fan or you're participating. When you look around at some of the facilities of the schools that we engage with, how do you feel like we compare with the things that we have and the things that other places provide?
I'd say when walking into other schools, like some technology is a little bit more advanced as ours, but honestly, I feel like with like little updates and stuff, that's not gonna make like a big difference. I feel like we compare to most schools rather than that.
Yeah, I mean, there's always room for improvement, but like we always talk about how we should host, like when we're in the jungle at some football games, it's like we just talk about how we should host all the football games, all the basketball games, just because our facilities are so great and we just have room for people, and it just makes, we have like bathrooms and like everything's all taken care of there. And so I really do feel like we compare, and like that's a big thing that could draw people to come see as how great, because I feel like that helps us in like our sports too, helps draw money in and helps in a whole bunch of different aspects.
Great.
And the disconnect is when you go to those sporting events, our football team I think we had more people at Chelsea on Chelsea's homecoming than Chelsea had. When I went to the volleyball games, on the road, we had more people there than the host schools had. So where's the disconnect? How do we not get enough yes votes for that stuff? We have that type of strong support for our students.
I think it's got to be more grassroots and in a better economic time. And we have to do what Tim said. We have to brag on how great we are, and we have to find out how to.
Well, our academics too. I mean,
Yeah, but
saw
we don't
that
do
the
a good
last
job
time-
of tooting
last
our own
board
horn.
meeting, where we're at academically compared to other people in the county.
Right.
So it's
Well, I think even in the state, I mean, we have a
Right.
K through second grade science program. That's nationally, a national curriculum. Most school districts in Michigan don't have that. And so I think, the STEM piece of it to draw new families is important. And I think really working with the city, I think we had good discussions moving the needle with them between the first bond vote and the second bond vote, but we have to continue to build that relationship and be one voice out from Tecumseh about how good both the city and the schools together are. And that's in our strategic plan, right? The backbone is the community. So I think this is all good discussion. I think it sounds like your board's in agreement. So I saw some head nodding from our newly elected members out there as well. So, I mean, I'm disappointed we didn't pass the bond, but I'm excited about the discussions we're going to have and what will come out of it. So some of the best things come out of perceived.
At first, you don't succeed.
I try,
That's right.
but not the same thing over and over. Anyway, that's the lesson for everybody today. All right, let's move into superintendent's report.
Consent
Oh,
agenda.
yeah, I gotta go through
Oh,
action
consent
items and
agenda.
then
Yeah. Well, we
consent.
have no action items on the agenda today.
Right.
Consent agenda. Sorry, I skipped right over you, Suzanne. I'm sorry. Ready to do the motion on the
Yep.
consent agenda?
I hereby move to approve the consent agenda, which includes the following items: minutes from the regular board meeting of October 24th, 2022, and minutes from the study session of October 24th, 2022, to accept the June 30th, 2022 financial audit as presented at tonight's meeting.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda. Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Simpson,
Aye.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Consent agenda passes. Superintendent's report.
All right, great. I printed the strategic plan update, although I know because it's a Google shared document that each of you awakes early each morning and checks its progress to see what has been done recently.
First thing I do every morning, right?
Exactly. I know that that's the case. But in case you missed a couple of things, I will highlight some of the things that have been accomplished in the third quarter of the plan so far. So on the back of the cover page, which would be page 1, under develop district curriculum strategy plan and process, the box at the top, develop new course adoption process, including developing a curriculum council. We're in the process of doing that. And we should have that in place in the first quarter of the new plan in the spring of this school year. We, for many years, had a curriculum council that included staff, community members, board members to help inform new course adoption. And that is part of our policy. So Mrs. Way is working on developing that. In the next objective, explore real world course offerings. The Mrs. Way, the curriculum director, has been and will continue to attend LASD CTE committee meetings. That is partially a funding stream, but also something that we want to work in conjunction with to offer some of the things in the Hot 50 jobs areas that our students and other students in the county might be drawn to. Under create an academic culture shift, implementing a curriculum implementation model with monthly meetings that involve the instructional coaches. And that has to do right now with the new English language arts curriculum that the board paid for and adopted last year. So just an ongoing training model for those new items that come in, we've got a training process that is, I think, very much appreciated by our staff. Under the goal area of learning environment and culture, objective, explore new trade course offerings. This is would be page 2. We are reviewing current THS elective offerings between the curriculum director and high school administration, working on staffing and scheduling to expand offerings for 23-24. So conversations about what we might want to add to the high school program for next year have begun between the curriculum department and high school administration. The next one is expanding career exploration opportunities. The Future Educators After School Club at TMS and THS has been founded, and we have an application in for Future Proud Michigan Educators Grant to help fund and develop our own talent in terms of a cadet program within our own district, which also helps us with our teacher shortage problem down the road. So that's an exciting accomplishment to get that started. Page 4, which would be on the back of the page I just read from. Obviously, bond proposals 1 and 2 were unsuccessful. So we have begun the conversation about talking about what's next. And the board security committee, in conjunction with facilities, is developing the door and entry security plan for the immediate future. In terms of developing a plan to address needs if there is a no vote on the bond proposal, again, we started that conversation. I know that we'll have robust conversations in December and January on that topic as well. The second to last page, increased face-to-face recruitment of new staff. I thought that there was a fairly innovative, albeit fairly lucky, hiring of a Spanish teacher who is currently working remote, but will be moving to the area this year to take that position in person. But just being able to secure that person allowed us to keep a curriculum going that we had many kids invested in. So we're very happy about that. Develop and innovate competitive compensation structure. We do have the wage agreement with the preschool staff that was implemented recently by the board. And then we're currently working with the instructional assistant group to address some of their pay issues in an effort to hire the necessary people going into this year. We sort of leapfrogged some people on the pay scale. So we're going to work with that group to correct some of those things. We have to get those numbers to the budget committee so that they're aware of it, and then hopefully come to the board soon after that to get approval. And then in terms of onboarding, we have a new hire process log in place. Much like the document you're looking at, it is a shared Google Doc between the HR department and our building principals, so they can see along the way how the process is moving. And some of it, especially with hourly people, is a little bit out of our control because those people have to finish the EduStaff process in their hiring. But this document allows our principals to see what's going on, and if they need to, make some phone calls to get it to speed up. And then the last page, notification systems. After some fairly strong failures on my part to make IC Messenger work, we are now using ThrillShare, which is part of our Aptigee agreement. Aptigee is the company that hosts our webpage and our mobile app. They work with IC, and that is currently the way that we're communicating information out. Now, we're working on making that also deliver information to our staff. But right now, we're just kind of splitting it up. Victor sets it up so that he sets an email to our staff through our internal email system as the way to communicate with our staff, and then ThrillShare communicates with all of our families. And then in terms of stakeholder input, recently on the dress code issue, which you'll hear about at the next meeting, a survey was sent to the local Chamber of Commerce and also to the students of THS as they build their plan on the new dress code here at the high school. So those are just the highlights. Again, you can check that on a regular basis to see what's being filled in each quarter and how progress is being made. At some point during that fourth quarter, we will start to address the strategies for year two and begin those in April of this year. So that's where we are with strategic planning. And then lastly, I just wanted to welcome our newly elected board members that will be seated at the January meeting, Mr. Josh Madison and Dr. Jacob Martinez. They have attended an orientation that was delivered by myself and Board President Repetero. Both have received their certificate from the county clerk, and we're working with them to get those
No hiccups.
registered.
We all signed everything. No,
we are
okay,
communicating regularly to make sure that we have everything stamped and dated on time. So welcome, and we'll have a bigger welcome for everyone on January. But I'm glad you're here tonight, and I think you both plan to be a part of the gallery for the December meeting as well, correct? Good, thank you. That's it for me.
Any questions from the board? Okay, items scheduled for next agenda. Mr. Hilderly.
Listed on your agenda, the THS dress code report and presentation. They also have a committee that's been working on what to do with this space here in the library. So they've got a recommendation on that for the board to hear about. We will, for good news, be celebrating our some of our fall sports teams. Ladies, you'll probably be invited back for that meeting as well. And then Mr. Zajac will also be giving the formal fall sports report
at the next meeting.
Yep. And then we want to mention that we will have a reception for our exiting board members, Mrs. Moore and Mrs. Brooks. So if you're a fan of cake, and I'm a fan of cake, so I will be here at 6:30 for that reception for those folks before the regular meeting at 7 o'clock. We got to eat the cake before the football team gets here. They'll still swarm it, and
It'll be gone.
You don't have to so much worry about the cross country kids, but so those are.
They're out of season now.
Well, no,
Yeah.
they're not though. A
Either
lot of
way,
them are playing other
we'll run it
sports.
all.
So. Okay. Well, now we're moving into public comment for any item in accordance with the Open Meeting Act of 1986. The board provides opportunity for citizen input during the public comment. Because agendas are full, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, and we ask if you do come and speak to at least introduce yourself to us. So, anybody for general public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to board member comments and discussion, and we typically let the students start. So if you guys have any comments you'd like to share.
It can be good news, like bragging on a team, or
So, yes, that's what I was just thinking about. We are working on a toy drive for Toys for Tots. And so we just signed out. We're trying to do like a big social media campaign with it. Tomorrow's Giving Tuesday. And so we're trying to get a lot of people to donate. We have a link. It's like an Amazon wish list. And then we talked in our leadership class about some other things that we can do for fundraising. We did a popcorn sale a couple weeks ago to support a community or a school community member that was going through a rough time, and our goal was to raise like $300, and we raised like $1,000.
Aw.
So we were really excited about that. Like fundraising in our school has been awesome. Everybody's been really supportive. We're really excited for our winter sports season. Lots of fun games coming up. The girls varsity basketball team has their first home game tomorrow night at 5:30 or is it 7? I thought it was 7. I don't know. But we'll be there. Is there anything else you want to add? I think you covered it all. You got it. Perfect. Yeah.
And my grandson is assistant varsity basketball coach. I just found out.
All right.
I'm going to have to come to some basketball games.
Special seat right behind the bench.
Yeah.
One thing that I want to mention, I should have brought up in my report, is that this will be the final live stream of our board meetings. There are several reasons for that. One of them being that we're the last school in Lenawee County who's continuing to do this out of the COVID years. But the real technical reason is that if you choose to live stream your meetings, the American with Disabilities Act requires that it be closed captioned. And our YouTube channel has an automated voice to text. But if a member from the gallery speaks and it's not picked up by the microphone, or if one of our board members is too soft spoken, then that closed captioning is incorrect. And technically you're supposed to go back into the recordings and correct it, which we just don't have the resources for. So I've pulled the plug on the live streaming, and
Yeah, I know it's hard to hear me.
yes, everybody
That's
says
a joke.
that. Everybody says.
You can
So
hear me
just,
next door.
any members who are live streaming or members of the press, we just wanted to give you this one heads up that from now on, our meetings won't be live streamed. You will get to enjoy our company in person here at Tecumseh High School moving forward. And thank you, Devin, for the last 2.5 years of faithfully sitting through the meetings there at the command center and making sure that everything worked. But we're gonna move on from that. Thanks.
Comments?
Talked out, Lynn.
Talked out. Well, I don't have many. I was gonna echo the fall sports. I'll leave it to the good news though. But it wasn't just football. For those that might be watching, I think every fall sport had considerable success this season. And I just I'm excited about the strategic plan. I did go look at it on the drive, but I realized anyway. I was really excited about that. I think the CTE committee, new CTE items. There's a new hot jobs report coming out from the MEDC. I actually get a advanced copy here shortly, so I can share that before it's reviewed. But all good stuff that's happening here. And to Mrs. Moore's point, we need to. It's not really
Toot our own
bragging. It's just
No, it's saying
just
we
stating
are
the
successful
facts.
in these areas, and
So, yeah,
We need
Be
to
nice
plant
to
our
see it.
flag.
Yes.
do it.
There
It'd
we
be
go.
nice to see a compilation of where a lot of our students just in the last 10 that graduated in the last 10 years where they're at. I know we've got a couple kids who got full rides to MIT. One young man's a professor at Purdue teaching in the math department. We have another young lady who's a researcher at Stanford. Those are just some of the ones I know because they went to school with my kids or shortly thereafter. So I mean, it's a pretty distinguished list. I don't think very many schools in this area can compare with that. And they all got prepped right here. Started in the home, but the school helped get them to where they were at. And there's others. Those are just the ones I can think of off the top of my head because my kids talk about it. Like, you know what he's doing now?
Well,
Another
and
one
college
at
is not
John
for
Hopkins.
everyone, so you know,
Pardon
you
me?
be like my husband and be a plumber.
Yep, exactly.
And we gotta
need to
drag
make
the
more
trades
money
in
than
here
the
more.
Stanford researcher.
Mr. Lewis, you can talk
Probably.
about your own kids.
Yeah.
3 valedictorians who now have elevated degrees. There are so many cases, you're right, where if we just highlighted a few of them each meeting, it would still take us a couple of years to get through it.
Yeah, and the school prepped them for that because their father had nothing to do with it. Because I would have been valedictorian if 113 people hadn't cut right in front of me.
If you had cut out Mr. Robitaille.
He was behind me, the poor soul.
Oh, boy.
And we also need to get those people in front of the students so that they can see what other kids from Tecumseh do.
Right.
So,
Okay,
all right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Adjourned.